excuse me, number 4. I have the finale. I have The Bear episode 10.
All right, I had that at 3.
Well, okay, let's just talk before you reveal it. Let's talk about episode 10, the finale. I think, man, this is also a roller coaster of emotion. It hits you at so many intense moments. It also hits you with what the show became iconic for, right? Like with that one take, that one that goes on for like 10, 15 minutes at the beginning of this episode. You kind of think in your mind, are we just running back the hits? But there's also a very fascinating twist in the middle of this episode where Carmy gets locked in the freezer. And I thought this was smart. I thought this was genius. Like if something goes wrong on this opening during the stress test, what's going to happen? And the fact that everyone, that preparation that we went on this journey the entire season and it pays off. Richie stepping up to the plate. Every second counts. And he's saying, boom, motherfucker. That type of stuff. Those are the moments you look for in the finale. They gave it to us. Seeing Sid, after all that was built in with Coach K, her becoming a leader, right? Learning how to earn success and earn the trust of the people around her, her being successful despite and overcoming like that fear of failure. Amazing moments as well. All right. But it still has that moments that I was talking about earlier, that feeling of failure. When you see someone fail, a guy like Carmy, you're crushed inside. And then you see, like I talked about earlier, that relationship end with Claire. This is definitely on the list. I loved this finale. I think they landed the plane, and I'll save the Jamie Lee Curtis conversation for a little bit afterwards, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I was talking about 9, where it had just bigger moments than like a 5 or some other episodes in the season. That's why I like 9 too, because like it kind of was like a tease, like, oh, we had some good moments in 9 that we'll remember, but then 10 just takes those moments and runs with it, sprints with it. And I think you mentioned the Richie scene, or the Richie takeover scene, those 5 minutes and those first 10 seconds were like, what's going on here? Sydney, like Richie, like, are we not doing anything? And then they get into it. The music picks up, the dial just absolutely just turns the dial all the way up, and it's just chaos. And that's what we remember from season 1, the best moments, but they're executing without their main man. They're Michael Jordan, Carmy. And the fridge was always something that they hinted at throughout the season. You knew it was going to come into play at some point, but during the stress test, it was perfectly executed. This episode was amazing.
How do you think Jon Taffer would have assessed the Bear after this episode?
I was freaking out thinking about this too. I was thinking about Jon Taffer nonstop, even over the liquor license. I was just like, oh my God, like you got to get one in soon. Like, because they were talking about like, oh, it's got to be person, yada, yada, yada. I was constantly thinking of Jon Taffer. I'm a big Bar Rescue fan, if I haven't mentioned that before in this pod.
Can you imagine Jon Taffer, the moment that the fridge door snaps, and if we had that one shot going? That's how like they should shoot an episode of Bar Rescue during the stress test. Just a one shot, no cut. Here we go. But imagine that happens in an episode of Bar Rescue. Like, dude, do we call it? Do we keep on going? Is Jon Taffer himself trying to break the freaking door down? Like, what are we doing?
So it's hilarious because I was really thinking about this too. I think what would happen is one of two things. One, I think what actually would happen is Jon Taffer would shut it down. He would shut it down. He would shut it the
fuck down.
Because you can't like have a guy locked in the fridge. That's just not realistic. Like you would get someone and get him out as quickly as possible. But let's say he doesn't shut it down and lets it play out. Jon Taffer at the end would be like, wow, this was an amazing experience for this restaurant. This restaurant was at the rock bottom, and they went through so much adversity at the beginning. But you know what? Sydney pulled through. She hasn't proved herself. She proved herself tonight. Richie, someone that maybe was drinking behind the bar or something like that.
He stepped up to the plate. He had no idea, right? He used what he learned in this previous training in the last week, stepped up and got the job done, brought the energy needed. Yeah.
Right. But so overall, like Jon Taffer, I think would have been happy at the end of this episode, at the end of the stress test. But I just want to get back to episode 10 for a second, because you knew this episode at the beginning was going to hit different when the first shot is Sydney just talking to the staff, right? Just saying what plates and orders and everything like that.
Nervous energy all over the place.
Yes, but I think a key difference in this episode, they had casting title cards. Jeremy Allen White to start. Ado Jabiri next. Like they're like, yeah, this is gonna be a movie. Sit back and like get ready here. Like, buckle up. This is
Just like
going to be a
another
ride.
episode that happened during this season.
Yes, yes, yes. So they knew that this was going to be like like you knew that
It's a
going
roller
in,
coaster.
this is
It's a
going to
roller
be different.
coaster.
This is going to be different, and that's why I have it higher than you at 3. And again, if we think iconic scenes, the chocolate banana surprise,
Yeah.
call back to episode 6, Fishes. That was really good. Very like that was emotional. I got a little emotional.
And that's like I did get emotional. Ricky, like I had a teardrop during this episode, not gonna lie.
There's multiple times he did. That's
that
why it's so good.
But like that's also the fact that he did that. It's not just the frozen banana was given to him, but Richie's the one who orchestrated it. And you think about like how these episodes, even the flashback episode, connects like throughout the journey of these characters. Him asking Jimmy for a job during Christmas, and then like what he's gone on to become in the beginning of this finale, where Jimmy says, "Hey, looking sharp, young man." And like how he's so put together now compared to what he was during that flashback episode. And it's also Richie learning and then executing like those things that he learned from the 3-star Michelin restaurant, right? Make those experiences unique. And then also like Sid's dad. And oh, I don't drink, sir. Yeah, here comes a buffet of different like sodas. Like that. I was so proud of Richie in that moment. But if you want to go back to Jimmy and what you were saying, sorry for the tangent, but I just get jacked up thinking about these characters.
Like, just we'll keep going here. Like, I think even like, I think, all right, end of the day, just the moments had the key moments, but also it had just a good ending, like finale, wrapping up plot points and the character developments, like Marcus and Sydney. They're kind of issue at the moment because of the Marcus asking her out. That kind of comes full circle back to normal when they find out Josh was smoking crack, and they kind of bonded after.
They bonded over that. That was wild. Yeah.
He was great at cutting carrots.
But that happens in a restaurant, though. Like there's always like a drug culture within restaurants. So like I can guarantee people watching this are like, yeah, that happened. like I was next to a guy smoking crack like behind the kitchen or something like that. That happens.
Crazy stuff happens. Like, and I think more like character is like Carmy, for example. Obviously, like total meltdown here, but and also just trying to figure out like what am I doing wrong here? Kind of pins it on the girlfriend, and obviously that was a heartbreaking scene when she like replaces Tina outside the door, and then cousin comes and they're yelling at each other, and he's like, "I love you, I love you, I love you," and then the voicemail, that was another emotional one. The voicemail, I was like, "Oh my god, crushing. They had to do that to us."
Absolutely crushing, Ricky. And I want to pose a question. Do you think, like Carmy, does Claire Bear come back for season 3, or she don't?
No, and again, this episode is so good. This finale is so good because it poses questions. Marcus, what's going to happen with his mother? Sydney, is she going to be able to cut it? Is she going to have to puke every night like she did just over the stress? And this was just a stress test with family and friends. And with Carmy, it's like, all right, we saw a little Joel McHale this episode. Remember that?
Yeah.
Is he going to turn into Joel McHale? Probably not. But will he in season 3 and then maybe season 4? They wrap it up with him coming back to normal and being the best of himself with Claire and such, or are they going to try to make things right next season with Claire, and he's not going to turn into a Joel McHale type? I think it's going to be more of the latter, and I am really interested though, like if they don't bring back Claire, because she was a great addition to this cast.
She was so good.
And I think, and I think Sugar also is a great addition, being more involved in this season. Like they just hit these castings perfectly, and they kind of like pinpointed like, all right, a couple weaknesses in season 1, like the character development, like getting to know each of them, and also some people that might not have gotten enough screen time, like a Sugar, like an Oliver Platt, maybe Uncle Jimmy, and they added them in more, and they had some of the best moments of the season.
I thought Uncle Jimmy was amazing during this season. He like his monologue when he's talking about Bartman too, and he kind of like foreshadows what's coming for the bear in the finale with Carmy and everything. I thought that was excellent. I thought that was one of his best moments, and I thought he was great in episode 6 as well, especially going with like the Richie situation, asking for a job. Okay, I do. And speaking about like some of those highs, right? Like things that we were just like happy, the accomplishments of this team, especially when their fearless leader goes away. We have to talk about someone that was introduced during episode 6, Academy Award winner, Jamie Lee Curtis, returning for a second episode. And it has such a heartbreaking sequence. And it's oddly enough, not with anyone in the direct family. It's with Pete and the husband of Sugar. They're having a child together. He sees that Jamie Lee Curtis is outside and she's smoking and she's basically unsure if she wants to go in or not. I wouldn't even say unsure. She's committed on not coming in, but she just wanted to see what's going on. This is the moment I cried when he sat back down and explained to Sugar that he had to circumvent the idea that Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't actually coming. Mom wasn't coming. And it was heartbreaking to watch after episode 6 to see her again after that terrible moment with her crashing into the house and her like deeming herself unworthy of seeing the success firsthand of her kids, where she doesn't feel like they want her to be there. And she doesn't, it's just really hard to watch and hear her portray it. And it's so great timing with her Oscar win. And then she's in this. I want to say congrats to Jamie Lee Curtis for the best guest star nomination at the Emmys. I thought she was spectacular in this scene, but I thought also Pete was great. And he's someone we don't think a lot about. And that's what this season did. It's these supporting characters we didn't expect a lot of. And all of a sudden, they have these wonderful moments and great acting performances. But I want to get your thoughts. What do you think about the Jamie Lee Curtis aspect in this finale?
Yeah, I think it was a fantastic scene. Again, another emotional scene. Like
Crushing.
this episode just hit after hit with the emotional punches here. Yeah, just I think like deserving to be in the restaurant because it's so good. I think is so interesting. She's afraid to ruin it. But the thing that really got me, which wasn't either of those two things, was when she didn't know about the baby. I was like, oh my God, that's how far away she is from.
And you see the look in Pete's face drop. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe I messed up again. But he's like not doing the wrong thing. He just doesn't understand how the family operates yet, which is crazy because he's been in it for this long.
And I think it's interesting because like Pete is kind of like the Tom Wambsgans in Succession.
Yeah.
From like season 1, season 2. Tom. He's kind of a pushover. He is a pushover. They make fun of him, but he's accepted at the same time, right? That he's not one of them. He doesn't understand everything, but he's a part of the family.
Doesn't belong.
And Donna's using him as saying, tell me it's okay. Tell me to leave because I know nobody else will, but I know I can say that to you or tell you to tell me that so then I can get permission to leave, right? Because he's just good enough.
It's a pushover.
Yeah, so he's just the ultimate pushover. And this guy, Pete, Chris Witsaki, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's not really been in much. He's been like one episode of a bunch of television shows that but only like one. This is like a breakout moment for him, for sure. Yeah. I think he did a great job, like just good supporting character in this scene. Very good supporting, good emotional touch, good crier. Everything came full circle for him in this scene.
I wanted to say, like, he is usually a pushover, but this is the most he's ever resisted anyone in the family, where it's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's eventually going to do it, but he has that resistance in this moment where he knows there's going to be repercussions. And then that pain and guilt he feels when he sits down, like that next scene, is nearly as crushing. When he has to he can't tell his wife what happened regarding her mother. Like that made me lose it a little bit. That's just like, that's like in the middle of this episode. It's just so emotionally high. Anything else to add regarding the finale? I know
REM at the end was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was again, AC/DC was the end of episode 9, REM at the end of episode 10, and a bunch of other great, like this soundtrack. Again, just unbelievable. The Bear, great at picking music. I think overall, like when you look at finales, this is one like that's a good blueprint for other shows in the future.
Yes, and it's not a series finale, so it's like it didn't have as much riding on it, but it's still like after season 1, trying to like level up and then also tease the next season. They did a great job of that. I think we now need to decide because we have to talk about what the next episode's going to be. And so you had this at 3. I had the finale at 4. I had Honeydew at 3. Where did you have Honeydew?
So I had that at 4.
Okay. Let me explain why I guess I had Honeydew. This was the example of like, hey, we're going deeper in the bag. We're not just known for the one shot. We're just not known for displaying Jeremy Allen White or Eben Moss Backrack and just relying on their performances. We can go into a supporting character, tell a story, go away from Chicago. We can go to Copenhagen, and then we can still tell a pretty kick-ass story. They slowed it down. And this is also the first major guest appearance that we get, cameo, Will Poulter. Will Poulter was phenomenal in this role. There was like no guest appearance from these major, like notable actors that missed. They picked it perfectly. And Will Poulter was a great, I guess, a parallel to what Carmy is. And when he was talking about, and he's very hard edged when he first meets Marcus, who's like the star of the episode, and he's very much like doesn't want to get emotional, but it's impossible when you are like with Marcus. Marcus is such a lovable guy. By the end of them, you see that bond, and you see that carryover in the finale where you have Will Poulter's character send him like, "Hey, good luck today." Then it says number 33, Scottie Pippen. And I was like, damn, like this show knows how to connect episodes and knows how to get you in your feels. But I loved Will Poulter here, and he seemed perfect. Like you could see him alongside or competing against a Carmy. And when he was talking about to Marcus, that person I competed against, right? That person that I was rivaling and they were my competition, I viewed them as, but they never really were or should have been. Did you know it was Carmy the entire time?
Had to. Like, who else would they be talking about?
Right.
Like, it would have had to introduce a new character, whether later on in the season or into season 3, and I just didn't believe that whatsoever. I think Honeydew was great. It's my number 4, and again, one of my locks. One of my 4 locks of best episodes. It felt different, obviously, with a Copenhagen setting for the most part. And again, Marcus, not an Eben Moss Backrack, not a Jeremy Allen White, not an Ayo Edebiri, but the 4th, you would say, I guess, on the top billing, the 4th name that would go on this list, he gets his own individual episode. And again, it's someone that the very first shot in this season was of him with his mother.
I was going to say that.
So
yes.
They hinted at it, right? They gave us this episode. Yes, the Will Poulter cameo stole the show. All right. Lionel Boyce plays Marcus. He was very good, but Will Poulter absolutely steals the show. But overall, this is a great episode. It's also interesting because I think the first 3 episodes, I mentioned that Joanna Kahlo, I think she directed the first 3, and then Rami Youssef directed the 4th one. He only did this one. So very interesting here because after this, I think Christopher Storer directed the rest of them. If not, maybe just 6 through 10, which I think was the best part of the season. But I think Honeydew, overall, like, you felt the difference in the tone, which is why I gave the edge to the finale. And also the finale just had those moments, again, like I used in my argument, my pitch for episode 9, where I gave the finale the edge. But Honeydew, again, just the Will Poulter of it all, the different setting, how everything just worked versus the first 3 episodes. I think everything worked, and I won't call them slow, the first 3 episodes, but they definitely were just a little different than episode 1 or season 1, where in this one, we finally get to see some, at least, cooking where it's baking and some involvement, some interactive, some teaching. And I think overall, like, I really like this episode. And it's definitely in my top 4.
Like seeing those 2 characters, Will Poulter and Lionel Boyce's character, bomb throughout the episode was special to watch. But also, as much as we love Will Poulter, right? Or I love Will Poulter. I love the stuff that he does. Maybe not as much Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We don't have to talk about that. Maybe in the future he gets a little bit better. Or at least he's written a little bit better. When it comes to Lionel Boyce's Marcus, it talks about a lot of his background. Him as like a Division III college football player, someone who's not tight with his brother any longer, someone who has is taking care of his mother, that is living beyond her life expectancy after her diagnosis. You can tell it's like, Marcus, wow. It's like he is always smiling in the kitchen, and he's always like has an appetite and he has a hunger to learn more. No pun intended. It's the episode also had a very poignant moment with him, with the bike crash, the homeless guy underneath the fence. And it kind of lines up well. What I took away from that, it's like, life throws wrenches at you, right? You have to turn one way, turn another. Like he talks about his background, had D3 football player, and then he worked at a telephone company, worked at McDonald's, and then he had this opportunity to work as a baker. Like life takes crazy turns, just like his mom gets sick and needs to take care of her. This person he walks on like the highest moments of him as a baker in Copenhagen, and he just stumbles upon this person trapped by this fence, like fighting for his life. And then he saves that person. That person gets on the bike. He goes like, "You're just gonna ride off? You should go to the hospital. You're bleeding everywhere, dude." And the guy just goes. And then he just goes back to his boat, resides, and he calls Sid through FaceTime. I thought that was a very important moment because it shows like the life of people in a kitchen. It's not always rewarding. It's like a hard life to live. You have to push through. And sometimes you're not going to make the most money, right? But they have a passion for something. They can just push, keep moving forward. I think it's a huge point of emphasis for Marcus. So I just like that moment.
Yeah, and like when you're in the kitchen, you don't actually see the satisfaction of your work. You don't see the pleasure like Richie does in the front of the house. Like you don't get to see that. So it's like you're just making food and you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning doing this, and it's going to be eaten by people 12 hours later, but you don't even get to see it. So I think this episode, again, just to kind of go back to the directing here with Rami and Youssef instead of a Christopher Storer.
Amazing that he directed this, by the way. It like FX connection with Rami.
Yeah, exactly. And Christopher Storer, who's worked on Rami as well. But in like Christopher Storer, clearly very good at intensity, anxious, fast-paced scenes. And this is the exact opposite, but we're still cooking. And that's what, and there's no music like when they're cooking. It's like pretty.
Yeah. It's quaint,
Yes.
know? And there is a great score in here when they're outside the kitchen, though. I did love the music. Yes. And it was very beautiful. It fit the Copenhagen setting. I'm not talking about Holiday Road, even though it's always a nice jam to like a needle drop, but the score itself I thought was amazing. And they slowed it down, man. It was great. I love this. God damn it. Are we gonna do this again? Here.
You let me have 9.
Hey, I'm okay with the finale at 3. I had it initially, but I rewatched Honeydew. I'm like, God damn. Like the fact that they were able to pull this off, I'm okay as long as it's in the top 4. Let's do 5, 4. Let's do 5. That is going to be episode 9, the penultimate. We'll do 4, Honeydew, episode 4. We're going to do 3, the finale, episode 10, the bear. Now we're down to 2 and 1.